Chapter 17 of Hard to Beat by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17. The Red Dog Mine Proves to be a New Monte Cristo. There was great excitement in and around the stock exchange next morning over CH&D. Everybody was talking about it. The paragraphs in the newspapers relating to it sent a small army of venturesome lambs down to try their luck in slippery Wall Street. An upward tendency was given to the whole list by the rise of CH&D, and the bulls were radiant. And every point that the stock stored meant an addition of $500 to Bob Brooks. When he went to lunch, he was $3,000 better off on paper than when he came to work that morning. Many brokers had sold the stock heavily for future delivery, and had been called by the purchasers. They could not get enough to fill their contracts, hence the brisk demand set it up in bounds that afternoon. Many boys would have lost their heads over such a rapid advance in wealth as Bob was experiencing that day, but as the ticker in the office recorded the continuous rise, Bob remained as cool as though he had no interest in the matter whatever. The last quotation at 3 o'clock showed CH&D had touched 76. "That puts me $12,000 ahead," he said with a thrill of delight as he allowed the tape to slip from his fingers. "That's a lot of money to make in a few days. I think it's time I was getting out with my winnings. No one can tell when the end of this deal will be reached. The clique may already be quietly unloading their holdings, and then, with no big interest to sustain the inflated price, somebody will get hurt through their pocketbook, and I don't care to be one of the unfortunates. Phil would certainly give me the laugh." The next day CH&D went up to 82, and Bob ordered his stock sold. Not counting commissions, he was a clear winner of $15,000 on the deal. That afternoon he and Kitty Barnes celebrated the event at an ice cream parlor on Broadway, while the larger operators held hijinks in a different way uptown. It was merely a matter of taste and money. "Well, Bob," said Kitty next day when he showed her his check from Treadwell Company for $17,500. "What are you going to do with it this time?" "Put it to work again. I told Mother last night I was afraid you had the fever," replied the girl in a strong tone of disapproval. "You are presuming on your good luck. Money that comes to Wall Street always seems to stay here in the long run. You have such a splendid little nest egg for the future. I should think you'd prefer to hold on to what you've got. A bird in the hand is worth several in the bush." "I didn't say I was going to put it to work in the street, did I?" said Bob. "And you really don't mean to speculate any more?" exclaimed Kitty, her face lightening up with pleasure. "I didn't say that either, but as I can't say when I may get hold of another good thing in the market, I'm going to invest $15,000 in real estate uptown. I will do it through my mother. Now, I think that's sensible. Really, I have some hopes for you after all." "Have you? You do me proud, Miss Barnes." And Bob bowed ironically. "Now, don't be ridiculous," said the girl, shaking her index finger at him. "Have you anything in view? A house, perhaps? It is so much better than living in a flat." "You've hit it exactly, Kitty. I've heard of a fine place in the Bronx which can be bought cheap. It's an old family mansion that's to be sold to settle an estate. It's worth all of $35,000, but I can buy it for $26,000. There are splendid grounds about it, which are now run to seed, but would greatly enhance the value of the property if put in good shape." "But you haven't got $26,000, said Kitty. "Oh, I can easily get a $9,000 mortgage. In fact, twice that amount if I wanted it on the property." "Well, I'm glad to know your money is going in the right direction at least." "Yes," grinned Bob. "We Wall Street men need a good home." "We Wall Street men," mimicked Kitty with a laugh. "Sure, I expect to get married one of these days, you know. And as I might have a large family, I want a good-sized place. I suppose you expect to get married too, don't you?" "I'm not thinking about such a thing." "Now, I thought you girls thought about little else," snickered the boy. "Why, the idea!" "Well, Kitty, if no one wants you, I might take pity on you myself. There's nothing mean about me." "Don't you be so sure I'd have you if you asked me," said the girl with a slight flush. "Oh, you might do worse. I'm going to be a millionaire at 20. Then all the girls will be angling for me. Better get in on the ground floor while you still have the chance." "If you was to raffle yourself off, I might perhaps buy a chance," laughed the girl as she turned to her work. "I hear you've been monkeying with the market, young man," said Mr. Sharpley to Bob later in the day. "Yes, sir," answered the boy, rather uncertain how his boss would take the matter, now that he had an inkling of the fact. "I bought some C.H.&D. stock from Treadwell and Company at 10% margin." "C.H.&D., eh? What did you pay for it?" "52, sir." Mr. Sharpley looked at him pretty hard. "How came you to go into that before the rise? Another lucky accident, eh?" "I heard a man say he expected it would go up soon," said Bob with an innocent expression. "Seems to me you're getting all the tips that are in sight. I was told you sold out yesterday, so you must have done well. I advise you not to take to stock gambling, Bob. You mustn't expect to have luck always run in your favor. Put your winnings in the bank and let them stay there." "Thank you, sir. I won't forget your advice." "That's right. Here's another article about your Red Dog mine. It has been listed on the Western exchanges again and is quoted at 15 cents. Any time you want to dispose of your holdings in that line, I will get you a customer. How much have you got of it?" 30,000 shares, 10,000 of which belong to Mrs. Dickens, a friend of mine." Mr. Sharpley nodded and turned to his desk. On Saturday afternoon, Bob and his mother visited the property in the Bronx and looked it over. Bob had seen it before and was satisfied. Mrs. Brooks made a deposit of $2,600 and took the title deeds to have them passed upon by a lawyer. She employed Mr. Scrooge's lawyer, who went before a judge and had her appointed as trustee for her son with reference to the property. In 30 days it came into her control, and the family moved at once from the flat in West 117th Street and ate their Thanksgiving dinner in their new home. Mrs. Barnes and Miss Kitty, who were delighted with the place, were specially invited guests. Before Christmas, Bob had several offers to dispose of a large part of his Red Dog stock at a price ranging from 20 to 30 cents a share, but he refused to sell. Duncan admitted to Mr. Sharpley that he felt sore at having practically given away his block of 5,000 shares of that stock to Bob. "That boy is about as clever a proposition as I ever met," he remarked. "He is likely one of the shrewdest and most successful operators in Wall Street before many years go by." "He's all to the good, Duncan," replied Mr. Sharpley. "We will be sorry to lose him when he feels like branching out for himself. Why, he made enough out of the C.H.&D. boom a while ago to buy a splendid piece of property in the Bronx." "You don't mean it!" exclaimed Mr. Duncan, who went away more impressed than ever with the business capacity of Scrooge and Sharpley's messenger. Bob invited Mrs. Dickens to spend Christmas Day with him at the Bronx home, and Kitty and her mother also came to dinner. Bob's sisters had taken a great fancy to Miss Barnes, and between themselves May and Nellie canvassed the probability of Kitty becoming a member of the family. Occasionally they twitted Bob about the matter, but he always turned the subject down. On the first of the year the railroad was completed at Goldfield, and during the first week in January shipments of ore began to be made by the Red Dog mine. This naturally had a favorable effect on the stock, and considerable of it changed the hands in the San Francisco and Denver exchanges at an average price of 45 cents. Still, Bob held on to his holdings. Through Scrooge and Sharpley, who were now acting as his brokers on the stock, he kept himself well informed about Goldfield matters. The stock continued to advance steadily as the mine demonstrated its richness, and in the latter part of March it passed the $1 mark. Then a new lode was opened up with results similar to the famous Jumbo mine, and the stock boomed in a week to $2.60 a share. Acting on Mr. Scrooge's advice, Bob sold out at that figure, receiving in the aggregate $78,000, and he turned over $26,000 to Mrs. Dickens as her share of the transaction, leaving him $52,000 as the net result of an investment of only $125. Bob continued to work for Scrooge and Sharpley until he was 21, when he went into business for himself, at which time Scrooge and Sharpley lost their stenographer. She entered into a life partnership with Robert Brooks, now the smartest of all the young brokers of Wall Street. The End. End of Chapter 17. End of Hard to Beat by a Self-Made Man. Recording by Keith Salis.